Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. This is our second session in a three-part series on DOT and Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration compliance. Today's topic is roadside inspections, what employers need to know and how to prepare for those. A little bit about Relion Insurance Solutions. We have offices throughout Eastern Iowa, including Iowa City, Kelowna, Muscatine, and in the Victor and Williamsburg areas. We do offer a wide variety of insurance products throughout the state, including personal lines, commercial, property, auto, work comp, for financial services, and then value-added services, which is an example of what we're doing here today. Today's speaker is Officer Luke Feld. He is with the Iowa DOT Motor Vehicle Enforcement. He is primarily working in the Des Moines metro area, and the MVE's core mission is the enforcement of the federal motor carrier safety regulations, including things like vehicle size, weight, registration, travel authority, and all of the above for commercial motor vehicles. He is a 16-year Iowa law enforcement veteran and is one of MVE's 3 lead field training officers. And he also helps manage their social media account. So I would encourage you after this to log on to their social media account and like their page. You can see some of the things that they're doing throughout the state of Iowa. So with that, I will go ahead and turn the reins over to Officer Feld. Luke, take it away.
Hello, everyone. You're having a good day so far. Bring up my presentation here. So mostly what we're focusing on today is the roadside inspection part of what our officers are going to do when we do put a truck on the side of the road, or at one of our scale facilities. So kind of Kristy already mentioned, our core mission is we are primarily enforcing federal motor carrier safety regulations. We do enforce all of Iowa law, including traffic law as well as criminal law. MVE has 107 sworn officers, 80 of which work roadside or way station according to schedule. Officers are scheduled either a road shift or a way station shift for the day, and throughout the entire state. We are Iowa law enforcement certified officers, and we help cover a wide variety of incidents outside of the commercial motor vehicle world. If there's a protest in the city of Des Moines or a natural disaster, we're always responding to that. Okay, so what is a commercial motor vehicle? So if looking at this slide, this is what the Code of Iowa says a commercial motor vehicle is. So it's any single motor vehicle with a weight or gross vehicle weight rating of 10,001 pounds or more that's operating either interstate or intrastate. That combination vehicle with a weight or weight rating of 10,001 or more pounds in interstate commerce. So there's a little bit of a difference there. So if something is operating specifically in interstate commerce, there's a little bit, it covers a lot more things than a vehicle that's just operating within the state of Iowa. So any combination or single vehicle that's 10,001 pounds or more is going to be considered a commercial motor vehicle, which if we go down to that third point, if it's operating just in intrastate commerce and that power unit is under 10,000 pounds and that combination is less than 26,000 pounds, it's not a commercial motor vehicle. So that can be quite confusing, but if it's more than 26,000 pounds or that single power unit is more than 10,000 pounds, it is considered a commercial motor vehicle according to Iowa code. Now, obviously, there's a lot of vehicles that are engaging in commerce that might be besides those vehicles. It's not something that we actually consider a commercial motor vehicle, and it's not something that we're going to do an inspection on. Those vehicles are still subject to all of Iowa code, but we're not going to apply the federal motor carrier safety regulations, as well as a vehicle of any size if it has if it's used to transport a placarded amount of hazardous material, whether that's a motorcycle or a full-size truck, tractor, semi-trailer. Any amount of a placarded amount of hazmat is going to be considered a commercial vehicle. So kind of just looking at, this is all the different types of things that we're going to consider commercial, anything from buses to nurse tanks to straight trucks to grain haulers. It's a wide variety of things that we're looking at when we're enforcing these regulations. So when we get to pre-trip inspections and how we recommend a pre-trip inspection to be done, there's more than one way to do a pre-trip inspection. How we kind of recommend it is through these next slides, and this is how we're going to do our walk around, and these are the things that we are going to look at when we're doing an inspection of a vehicle. So we're going to start inside the cab. We're going to make sure that everything in that passenger compartment is where it's supposed to be. His driver wearing his seat belts. Do all the gauges on the dash work? Are there any warning lights on the dash? A very common one that we see is ABS malfunction light, as well as any sort of brake malfunction lights, either low air warning lights or a hydraulic dummy light. We're going to make sure that the commercial motor vehicle has a working fire extinguisher and either some sort of warning triangles or flares. We're going to kind of move to the front of the truck. We're going to check every lights that's on the front. We're going to check headlights, high beams and low beams. We check for working turn signals. We check those independently of the four-way hazard lights. They have to work independently of each other. And then ID and clearance lights, which we'll get to a slide coming up that shows you the difference between an identification lamp and a clearance lamp. And we're going to make sure that all the windshield wipers are working properly, as well as any cracks in the windshield. So this is what's allowed for damage inside of a windshield to what's considered a violation. So if it's outside of that box, it's not going to be considered a violation. Where you're allowed to have a single crack as long as it does not intersect with each other. If it's a circular damage or a chip that's 3/4 inches or less, as long as it's not within 3 inches of any other type of damage. So that 2 inches from the top, the 1 inches from the side, and then the top of the steering wheel, that's the kind of that box that we're looking in for damage to the windshield. It gets awfully specific when we talk about damage to the windshield. It's not as simple as it's a crack and it's a violation. It's not how it works. We're looking for intersecting cracks and then damages, that circular damage that's 3/4 of an inch or more, or if it's within 3 inches of any other damage. As you can see here, we have broken and missing windshield wipers. They can lead to an out of service condition if that windshield wiper is required at the time. So if it's rainy and those windshield wipers don't work, that could be out of service at that time. So these are the required front lights on a straight truck or truck tractor of this size. So these are the 3 identification lamps in the front, the cluster of 3 lights on the front or rear. Those are what are referred to as identification lamps. And our clearance lamps are off to the side. Those are all those 5 lights on the front and rear are required lamps. We're going to check turn hazard and our parking lights, as well as our headlights. If headlights are required and they are both out, that would lead to an out of service condition. We're going to check under the hood. We're going to check anything that we can kind of get our hands on. Our steering column, any sort of fluid levels, hoses, lines, spring shocks, brakes, anything that we can kind of see underneath the hood. Power steering fluid leaks are very common. Then we're going to kind of move into, we're going to check kind of the front left part of the tractor or truck. We're looking at tire conditions, brake linings, tire tread depth, any sort of brake conditions in general. It could be anything from, as you can see, a cracked brake drum here to brake lining thickness, hub oil level, hub leaks, plugs, just kind of the overall condition of the tire, as well as the rim itself. Is there any cracks in the rim, or are they bent? We're going to kind of move back around towards the fuel tank area. Any sort of fuel leaks, exhaust leaks. Does the truck have mirrors? An exhaust leak here. And then we're going to get kind of to the behind the cab area. Airline. We're going to definitely check the air lines. Are they chafing? Are they visible? Are they even plugged in at all? Are the electrical lines protected against shorts, and are they connected? This is probably one of the most common violations that we see, is damages to these brake lines, whether they be chafing or are they kinked or some sort of damaged in any way. As if you can look at this chart in the lower right-hand corner of the slide, this is right out of the out of service criteria. So if you can look at different types of damage to a brake hose and whether or not it's out of service. So any sort of damage or wear that reduces the diameter of that hose is going to be a violation, but it's not necessarily out of service. But they can, those lines, they can rub up against a lot of different stuff on those trucks, and like I said, it is without a doubt the most common vehicle violation that we see. It becomes out of service when that reinforcement ply that's within the hose becomes visible, and the ply is frayed, severed, or cut through, as well as if it just goes right through the hose and there's an air leak through the hose. We're going to kind of move back. We're going to check the coupling devices between the truck and the trailer. We're going to check the upper and lower fifth wheel connection, the sliding fifth wheel. On a couple of these pictures, you can kind of see a worn out pintle hook connection as well as an unsecured pintle hook. We have a semi trailer that's high sided in that fifth wheel connection. Probably not going to stay there all that long in that trailer. Probably looking at losing that trailer going down the road. Don't see a whole lot of that, but if we did, it's something we're going to want to address right away. We're going to check the drive axles as well. We're going to check, make sure wheels, rims, hubs, and tires, brakes on all these other wheels as well. We're going to check the lug nuts or wheel fasteners to make sure that they're there and they're tight, secured, not loose or missing, as well as whether they're leaking. We get to kind of the rear part of the tractor again. We're going to check to make sure that if the truck is manufactured after July 1st of 97, we're going to check to make sure that it has some reflective tape in the right spots. Up here on top, we kind of refer to them as the L corners, but it's 12 inches of white reflective tape that's both horizontal and vertical on each side. And then there is red and white reflective tape on the mud flap brackets. A very common question that we get are mud flaps required? Mud flaps are not required in Iowa or as part of the federal regulations. There are some states out there that do require mud flaps on a truck. Iowa is not one of them. However, the federal regulations do require that the mud flap brackets have that red and white reflective tape. So you don't need the mud flaps, but you do need the red and white reflective tape. And then we're also going to check the lights on the back of the truck. We're going to check brake lights, tail lights, turn lights, and the truck must have at least one operable reverse light. And we kind of move down the side of the trailer. We're going to check for a side marker light. It has to have that intermediate light if that trailer is more than 30 feet in overall length. We're also going to check to make sure that there is the reflective tape that goes down the side of the trailer. Yes, this is the slide. It has to cover at least 50% of the length of the truck, going down 100% of the length. So you don't have to have that red and white reflective tape down the whole length of it. It has to cover 50% of the area going down the whole length of the truck. We're also going to check, is that landing gear in good condition? There's not many violations involving landing gear, but when we're talking about pre-trip inspection, that's probably something that the driver is definitely going to be interested in doing is what is the condition of that landing gear. The biggest violation, probably roadside, which we don't see all that often, is it up? Is it not dragging against on the ground? We're going to check the frame of the truck and the trailer. The cross member rails, are there any cracks or any other damage that's affecting the overall stability of that vehicle? These are some pretty severe examples of that, but we do find cracks in frames quite a bit, and most of the time they've been there for quite some time. That should have been caught by a driver on a pre-trip inspection well before it's ever caught by us. We're going to look for things like this. Is a wheel even there? The rims, hubs, and tires again on the trailers. Sliding tandems, are they locked in place? Again, the hoses and brake chambers on the trailer. Wheel fasteners once again on the back side of the trailer. We get to the back of the trailer. We're going to check the ABS malfunction light. Is it illuminated? If that light is on, it's usually indicating a problem with the ABS system on that trailer. The regulations do require that the ABS system on the truck and trailer work. If it's required to have ABS, if it was manufactured at a certain date. Once again, we have ID and marker lamps on the back, as well as our tail light, turn light, and brake lights on the trailer. If you look at the left picture there, there's some more places where some red and white reflective tape is required on a semi-trailer. On that rear impact bar on the bottom, it has to cover the entire length of that, as well as on the door. That red and white reflective tape is required in both of those spots. So, and here, this is kind of what we're going to check that rear impact protection to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. That if that trailer was rear-ended, it's gonna hold up, at least do what it's designed to do. On the right picture here, we have a roll-off container. There's some specific ways that those have to be secured. We find those that the rear securement on those are it's not secured very, very often. It's a very common violation on these, and that usually boils down to the driver just not hooking them up like he's supposed to. Just a driver moving too quick or lazy and just moving and just not latching up a few things in the back that really take probably a matter of minutes at the most. So the lights that are required on the back, so we have our ID lights, our clearance lights, which can be optically combined with tail lights or turn signals, license plate lamp, and our tail lights. And of course, our turn lights, hazard lights. If even one of the turn signals on the rearmost part of the vehicle or group of vehicles is inoperable, that will be out of service. The regulations do require that both working turn signals on the back are working. And of course, brake lamps. And those are the lights that can lead to out of service conditions. Both brake lights would have to be out, and both tail lights would have to be out of service. So we get kind of to the kind of underside of the vehicle if we can see it, or if in our case we're doing a full inspection. We have our loose U-bolts, which is kind of keeping that axle in position, our missing or broken leaf springs. Not all that common, but we do see a fair amount of these, all things considered. Many times it's a thing where it's been broken for some time and it's been neglected. Our deflated air suspension, if the only suspension on that truck or trailer is air suspension, that deflated suspension would be out of service. But in any case, it's going to be required to work or be inflated. Brake conditions. These are things that probably a driver is probably not going to get under every day and check the condition of the brakes, but it's something that always that we recommend keeping an eye on, because most of the time we can see this stuff from the side of the truck or without getting underneath it. And if we can see it, a driver should be able to see it, whether that be too thin of a brake lining or excessive cracks or voids in the brake lining. Is the brake even working at all? A defective brake. In this case, this brake chamber is corroded beyond belief. There is a that whole front of that spring brake chamber is pretty much corroded. Anyone who knows anything about these knows that this situation is incredibly dangerous. That spring, that power, that spring under that front part of that brake chamber is under an immense amount of pressure. And the last thing is we want is any non-manufactured holes in that. If I would definitely get away from that thing. That thing's going to probably explode at any minute. As well as a driver clamping off a brake line with the vice grips and duct taping it. And in this situation, this is actually a very common violation on this picture, is a contaminated brake lining where some oil or grease got within that, between that brake lining and that brake drum, contaminating that friction surface there. That is also an out of service condition there. So cracked brake drums or rotors. So on our air brakes, we're gonna check for to make sure that brake drum is in itself not cracked. Our disc brake vehicles, we're gonna check the rotors to make sure there's not any excessive cracks or damage to those, as well as they're working properly. They can't have any excessive rusting on them. When we do our full truck inspection, our level 1 inspection, we are checking the brake adjustments. If there's a certain percent, if there's 20% or more of the brakes that are defective, it would place the vehicle out of service, or the combination of vehicles out of service. Just one brake out of adjustment will probably not make the vehicle out of service unless it's only a 2-axle truck. Like I said earlier, we are going to check to make sure that the truck has fire extinguisher and warning triangles. Very common violation is for those fire extinguishers to just be laying in the back of the truck or in the cab. They're required to be mounted and secured from rolling around and moving inside that vehicle. And the reason for that is if that vehicle were involved in an accident and that fire extinguisher is just laying around, um, the last thing is you want a fire extinguisher coming at your head when that vehicle's rolling. And I've seen that happen before on a bus where a bus was involved in a rollover and that driver had not secured his fire extinguisher, and the driver had said that it went right past his head, and had it hit him, it probably would have killed him. So we're going to require a fire extinguisher, but let's also make sure that they're secured and we're not going to cause any damage by those. So a good pre-trip can prevent a potential breakdown and reduce the time spent on the side of the road. It's always obvious to us where the drivers that are doing a valid pre-trip inspection and doing what they're supposed to, as opposed to the drivers and carriers who just get inside the truck, turn the engine on, and start rolling down the road. Okay, so when it comes to traffic stops and specifically motor vehicle enforcement, is why is my company being stopped, or why am I being stopped in my truck? So what generates a MV officer to put a vehicle on the side of the road? It could be one of a couple different reasons. The most common one is going to be our probable cause stops. If we see a known or observed violation, so speeding, seat belts, window tint, any sort of equipment violation that we see. When we train our officers, we're training them to look for violation. Our officers can make random stops, and that is done sometimes, but really we're training our officers to look for violations, and those are the trucks that we really want to look at. It could be based off officer experience, specifically when it comes to something like overweight vehicles. I'd say it's never never possible to know when a vehicle is overweight. Sometimes we know a vehicle is overweight just by looking at it, but sometimes you just know, okay, the density of this type of material, how much is loaded on, and how many axles that vehicle has. We can kind of put it together based on our experience of weighing vehicles, whether that particular combination or truck is going to be overweight. Sometimes it's not possible to know, and trucks are just weighed at random as well. There's also based on kind of our plan with the FMCSA. Our department does certain types of checks for certain areas. So if there's an area that has a large amount of truck crashes, we may schedule officers in that specific area to specifically address the things that cause crashes. So if let's say Marshall County has a large amount of truck crashes that have occurred in the last year, we may schedule more officers in that area, and those officers are going to be looking for things that cause accidents, like speed, following too close, talking on a cell phone, texting. They're going to be specifically looking for those things, as well as officers may be put on a weight check for the day. So they're not going to ignore other things, but they're going to be specifically looking for things on certain days if they're based on their assignment. So these are the things that we're going to kind of look for when we're talking to a driver. And it kind of can help you or your driver based on if you have these things ready to go, because not only is it beneficial for us to make the stop go as quick as possible, it's beneficial for you. We don't want to hold you up any longer than we have to. Some things take a little bit longer. And if we spend a lot amount of time looking for insurance cards or logbooks or paperwork on annual inspections, or the driver doesn't know where the registrations are, all those things take time, and we have to look at those things. So it's not uncommon for stops to be extended unnecessarily. So drivers should really know where, of course, where their CDL or med card is, but they should know where the registrations are in the truck and trailer. They should know if any insurance card or their logbook or annual inspections. It's not uncommon at all for drivers to have no idea where any of the paperwork is in a truck.
Hey, Luke,
Yes.
I just had a question come in
Okay.
regarding the med cards.
Okay.
Somebody asked, why do we need to carry our med card now if it's tied to our license?
So you don't have to carry your medical card if it's tied to your license. You only have to do it for the first 15 days, and that's to ensure that the DOT has uploaded it and attached it to your license. After that 15 days, it does not have to be. The only people that have to carry a medical card is someone who doesn't have a CDL but still is required to have a medical card, or there are drivers who have CDLs that specifically a K restriction that they only operate intrastate. So the state of Iowa doesn't require those drivers to put their medical card on file with the DOT. However, depending on what that specific driver is doing on that day, he may or may not need a medical card. So the most obvious example is a garbage truck driver. Okay, so those trucks are large enough to where that driver, they're not accepted from needing a medical card. So a garbage truck driver will always need a medical card if it's over 26,000 pounds, but very few of those leave the state of Iowa, so they're operating intrastate. Many of those, if not most, have intrastate only CDLs, to where their medical cards are not attached to their CDL. They still have to carry that paper copy. So the long way around is, if it is attached to your driver's license, it does not have to be carried. And when we actually run the CDL, when we get that record back from the DOT records, it shows all your medical card information on there. Now, most drivers will want to carry it anyway, whether it's there or not. But depending on what the driver does, he may be required to actually, and how he is it's all going to be about how he self-certifies his medical card status, whether or not he has to carry that on him or not.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And then, like Kristy said, we are on Facebook and Twitter, and like I said, I help manage some of that stuff. So we're always able to answer any questions on those, as well as our website, iowadot.gov/MBE. If you have any questions for our officers, if you go to our website, there is a contact us tab, and it brings up a map of the state, and you kind of check the area, the state you're at, and it'll open a box to send an email, and that email will go to the captain and the sergeants of that area. So they can get you a question about where any particular area you had. And I was just looking at the chat box here for the question involving logbooks for trucks under 26,000. So it's going to depend on what you're doing. as long as you don't leave the state, trucks 26,000 pounds and less are accepted from hours of service. So you don't need anything at all, as if you don't leave the state. If you are operating interstate, it's going to be based on a 150 air mile radius from your place of business. So if you're operating interstate and you exceed that 150 air mile radius from your business, a logbook would be required.
Perfect. Luke, while I have you, I did have another question that was DM'd in the chat to me.
Okay.
Am I required to document pre-trip inspections?
So as far as for us on the roadside, we don't check anything that has to do with the driver logging the vehicle inspection report. Now, depending on kind of what your company does, a daily vehicle inspection report may be required, especially if you're operating interstate. And you would have to keep those records for so long. However, though we don't check those roadside. So the only person that would ever probably check those is if the FMCSA did a compliance review of the company, or any sort of safety audit by or new company audit by some of our motor carrier investigators. But nothing has to be carried roadside for DVIRs or vehicle inspection reports. Besides that, the pre-trip inspection is required for any commercial motor vehicle. So if that driver did not do a pre-trip inspection, we would list it as a violation. But they don't have to carry proof of actually doing one.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. I don't think there are any more in the chat just yet, but we've got a few minutes. Hold on, we just got one coming in. How does the DOT get a copy of your med card? Does the medical people that issue the card info to the proper DOT people, or is it my responsibility to get the current med card info to the DOT?
So it is the driver, or sometimes the company's responsibility to submit that to the DOT. There's a couple different ways that you can do that, and actually, if I I will bring up a website. And if we go to the Iowa DOT's website, actually, I'm pretty sure. Just do a Google search. So if we go to how to submit a medical card if required, there's a couple different options that we have here, and I assume everybody can still see my screen. You have essentially 4 different options. You can mail it to the address here. You can fax it to driver services at that number. Probably the easiest way is emailing a scanned copy of it, as long as it's a PDF to the email address here. Otherwise, you can go in person to any driver's license issuance site. The problem right now is, and I think that's the way a lot of drivers were doing it in the past, is doing it in person. However, the problem due to COVID now, pretty sure all of the DL stations are only making appointments based on appointments. So you can't just show up right now because of COVID. Before, and I'm assuming it'll go back to this way after COVID, you can just randomly show up at a DL station. But right now, probably the easiest way is probably going to be just doing it through email. You can also check your status here. So if you're unsure, well, did it go through, or is my medical card certified, or is it attached, that you can check your status down here on this next link here. That's a handy resource. It's also probably a good idea if your drivers, to make sure your drivers have their current, to make sure they have their current address on their driver's license. Besides that being required by state law, if for some reason the DOT has to send them a letter regarding their CDL status or anything involving their driver's license, they're going to generate a letter based on their address on file with their on their driver's license. So if they had moved and they had forgot maybe to change their address, and they may not get that letter. Assuming stuff like that would be forwarded, but why even risk it? Like I said, it's required anyway by state law to update your address on your driver's license. But specifically when coming to medical cards, if you get 60 days after your medical card is expired and you haven't resubmitted your medical card, the DOT will go through the process of downgrading that person's CDL. So their non-CDL would still be valid, but their CDL status is going to be downgraded. They're not going to be eligible to operate a CDL required vehicle. So that's why a lot of the drivers who, if they never leave the state or they're not required to use a medical card, they may go and change. They may self-certify as I only expect to operate intrastate. It will put a K restriction on their license where they won't be able to leave the state, but it will save them potentially from getting downgraded. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need a medical card on the day when they're stopped. They would still have to have one. But that's why a lot of those drivers who they only stay in the area, that they're never going to do that. It would save them from having the hassle of either self-certifying or submitting renewed medical certificates, or or attaching that medical card to their license. And I can drop this link in here too if anybody wanted to check. So another question about CDL drivers needing a log no matter what, or only if they go over 150 air miles. So that's a pretty tricky question, because it's kind of based on what they're specifically doing. But right now, generally, yes, if they exceed that 150 air mile radius, they're going to need a log. There are certain things that are accepted from hours of service for operating intrastate. So these vehicles are going to be the ones that are exempted from hours of service if they're operating intrastate. So any public utility trucks, any trucks hauling gravel, any construction trucks and equipment, or any trucks moving implements of husbandry, or special trucks, which special truck is a farm truck, so it's special farm truck. So it's a farmer operating his own truck. The big caveat to this is it does not apply to truck tractors or any for-hire construction trucks. So if you're a private truck or a straight truck doing any of those things, then you're accepted from hours of service. Otherwise, that 150 air mile radius exception is going to apply to you. And the only thing that the driver would need to do is maintain a time card.
Okay, Lindsay, I hope that answered your question. If not, just get with me later and we can get you more information.
And if you have more like detail about what this truck is specifically doing, it can maybe help. Um, on a lot of this stuff, it depends on whether the truck is operating interstate or intrastate, and then whether it's a private company or they're operating for hire, and then what they're specifically doing on that day. So that's why, you know, when our officers they're asking all these types of questions because they're trying to figure out specifically what you're doing on that particular day. Because in this particular example, a construction truck that is, let's say, a straight truck or a dump truck, and he's just driving around the Des Moines area, he's not going to need a logbook. He's not going to need any sort of even medical card in this example. These trucks that I said were accepted from hours of service are also accepted from medical card requirements. But that if he, after lunch, he hops in a truck tractor semi trailer and he's doing the same job, he's then required to have a medical card because now he's in a truck tractor, as well as being for hire or not. So the best example that I can give for our for hire construction trucks is let's say a company like Manats. They're doing a big interstate construction project. That those dump trucks that are Manats, they're all going to be accepted from hours of service and medical card requirements, because they are private. That is their own Manats job. They're the private carrier at that point. However, let's say Manats needs more trucks because they're behind schedule, or it's such a large job that they need more trucks. So they hire Lukefeld Trucking he's got his own truck. So they're working for Manats on that job. That Lukefeld Trucking is now for hire, even though it's a same type of dump truck, same construction site job. However, that Lukefeld Trucking is now working for hire. He's not accepted from those medical card or hours of service requirements. So he would be required to have those things. He may still fall under the 150 air mile radius exception. So that doesn't automatically mean he needs a logbook at that point, but it gets very specific about what that specific truck or driver is doing on that day.
Thank you, Luke.
I did see the question here about the if you have a CDL and it was downgraded to get reestablished, do you have to just renew the medical card, or do you have to retake all the tests? The only thing you have to do is if your medical card is still valid, all you have to do is submit it to that website that I showed you. And as soon as it gets attached to your driver's license, they will remove the downgrade. So if that driver doesn't have a valid medical card, he would still have to go through the process of getting a current medical certificate. But after that, all they have to do is submit it, and generally that's pretty quick. And on email, it can oftentimes, when we've seen that, drivers are back in service within. I've seen it as quick as an hour, depending on how fast they can get that email in, as well as if it's a middle of Saturday night, obviously that probably not going to happen until Monday morning. But we've seen it, the turnaround on stuff like that, be pretty quick.
Great, thank you, Luke. Okay, is that the end of your presentation, Luke?
It is. It is. And if anybody has any other questions, I'm definitely able to answer those.
Wonderful. Again, you can always reach out to me if you have additional questions. If there's something I cannot answer, I can toss that over to Luke. So I think most of you were on the clearinghouse session last Tuesday, And if you can imagine, I spent the better part of the rest of the week helping clients with some questions. And I know I did toss a couple over to Luke as well as Cheryl Cooper. So we want to make sure that you have the tools, the knowledge, and the resources to manage your drivers, your fleet, etc. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, this is important not only for federal motor carrier and DOT compliance, but also most of you who have commercial auto policies with us will know that the rates have been trending up for the last few years. That's due to a number of things. Distracted driving incidents, accident costs are just rising. Increased costs for medical and vehicle repairs, as well as I think most of you can relate, just shortages of commercial drivers. And then again, litigation. We live in a litigious society right now. So litigation trends are increasing as well as settlements. So good vehicle inspection and maintenance practices can help you reduce losses and in turn keep your commercial auto rates as flat as possible as they continue to trend up. So there's a lot of reasons that we really want to make sure that you have all of the, again, tools and resources and services to help you through this. And related services from Relion that we can help with, we can develop and implement fleet safety policies, from distracted driving policies to training, to documentation of all of this stuff that Luke mentioned, as well as helping you understand the basics, which, by the way, we will talk about next week, vehicle inspection and other related training. So I think sometimes it's important for your employees to understand all of these drivers in the background, all of these factors, and their role in helping you, pay as little in violations and insurance as possible. And then we can also coordinate on-site training and other services with Iowa DOT. They have been a really, really great resource. I have brought them into multiple clients over the years to do a session just like this, where we can get a truck in and we can do a walk around together so that your employees can really see and understand some of the things that they want to look for when they are doing those vehicle inspections. And then, we can just answer general questions or consultation. We also have related resources if you're interested. We have a guide to DOT inspections. We have that documentation that you may or may not need. Some of these are best practice documentation, some are required. We have training materials for your employees. And I think most of you saw this last week. Again, just lots of great resources and training materials. And then, of course, we offer services outside of DOT and federal motor carrier compliance, things like helping you develop and implement handbooks and safety manuals to fork truck certifications, safety training, etc. Just want to put a plug in, as most of you saw this last week, it's a very, very busy month here at Relion. Coming up Thursday, I'm going to be talking about OSHA's record keeping rule, which requires employers. We have a couple of deadlines that are coming up February 1st and March 2nd. So you want to make sure that you attend that. If you would like the link to register, go to our website at relion-ins.com and you can sign up there for any of these. Next Tuesday, our final session is again going to be on those basics and how to improve your CSA scores. If you don't know if this is relevant to you, just shoot me an email or go out to our website and you can find more information on those events. But again, this is what you can do to kind of manage some of this stuff, to reduce those violations during roadside inspections, to really help again, manage those insurance premiums, because insurance carriers, when they're looking to quote your insurance, they are going to look at some of the publicly available information that's out there. So it's really important that you keep that in really good shape. And then we are doing a OSHA 10 hour for construction in a couple weeks here. That will be virtual. If you need more information, please reach out to me. Last call for questions. Hold on a second. I'm sorry, hold on. Luke, I think this was a new question that GVW over 10.
Yeah, I did see that question. I did answer it in the chat,
Oh,
but as
you did,
far as the
okay.
way, yeah, as far as the weigh station is concerned, the signs are based on vehicle weight. So if the vehicle or the combination of vehicles weighs more than 10,000 pounds, that truck would have to pull in to the weigh station. Now, in the specific case of stock trailer with horses for private use, it's doubtful that probably falls under the regulations. Sometimes with horses it can, but if it's simply like a recreational use, obviously that stuff doesn't apply to the regulations. But that vehicle still may be required to enter the weigh station.
Okay, I do have one more question that was sent to me. I have somebody saying that I have had 2 employees so far that have been downgraded, and I have documentation showing I have sent the paperwork through email. One of them has been sent twice, and they're still showing as downgraded. Is there a reason that you can think of that this might not be updated?
I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't get updated. I would definitely check the status of that on that link that I sent in, where you can check the status of your medical card. Um, as far as reasons why it wouldn't get done, I can't think of any reason. If for some reason it goes by like at least a business day and it hasn't been taken care of, I would definitely resubmit it, um, or check with one of those other options to make sure it's done. Like I said, most cases that I've seen where a driver had to do it really, really quick, the turnaround has actually been pretty quick from what I've seen. Um, as far as after from the previous medical card certification, that driver is not going to get downgraded for at least 60 days after that. Now he still may need to have a valid medical card for what he's doing, but he's not going to be down, and he'll be sent a letter and all that. But I can't think of any reason why, unless it was sent in by email and it wasn't in a PDF form, what as to why it wouldn't. If you have access to a fax machine, I know not everybody does that anymore, but that would be another option, as well as even the old-fashioned mail option.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you for that, Officer Feld. That's all we have for today. Again, thank you all very, very much for joining us. If you have any questions, need assistance, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will bring in Officer Feld where needed. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.